I feel like we might be like celebration familiar in a way, because like I think there's so many things to celebrate in church at the moment. It's insane. Like we've never had a summer that did not have a dip. Like, this one has just like cruised along insanely. Grow groups have outdone or groups in general, they've outdone all their numbers. And salvations, like we went over the 800 mark this weekend. So we'd be somewhere like 820 or something, I'd say 830 right now. So like everything is moving and it just feels like that. It just feels like there's momentum. Toronto is just flying. Like they're doing so amazing, breaking so many of their own records. And so I think it's really, really brilliant. And it has been my experience that sometimes like when you're in the height of your wins, you then start to kind of get hit with the reality of, I never saw that coming. And so I want to title today's Staffy, Where Are They Now? Where are they now? Does anybody remember, is anybody in this place old enough to remember the feeling of like, specifically for me in Australia, it was like our winter, which is like just cold enough that you need what I call a jumper, you call a sweater. And like mum or dad or someone says, hey, let's go get a pizza and let's go get a movie. And you drive up and they're usually side by side-ish and there's a Blockbuster and you walk in and you're not sure if you like the smell because it's like stale carpet and popcorn, but that is a memory in and of itself. Right? And you walk through the aisles and it's like you hold up different like covers and it's never in. It's just never in and it's like nothing's behind it and you still bring it to them because you're hoping that there will be something. And did someone bring it in? Yeah, in the return box. And then someone's often like, they'd also say, hey, we're just rewinding that one at the moment and you get charged if it didn't get rewound. Like Blockbuster was like a thing. And if you would have asked me back then, right, like, is it ever going to go out of business? Like I never, ever, ever would have imagined that would have gone out of business. There was a moment as well where if you were on vacation, in fact, there's a lot of like Audrey and I's dating and maybe even the beginning, probably our dating that like we have no photos for because they weren't on your handset. Like you needed either a digital camera or you still needed to develop film. And the name that was like everywhere was Kodak. Like Kodak was everything, a Kodak moment, you know what I mean? It was all that it was. And it's hard to imagine, right? Like that Kodak wouldn't be everywhere. It's like these companies that you would definitely imagine too big to fail, never gonna fall off. And yet they did that, they fell off. And how? Like it seems, in fact, Richard Branson, actually named Sir Richard Branson, which I've noticed this, if you talk to British people, about anybody that is British that has been knighted and you don't mention the sir, they correct you. Every time with a bit. And I was like, the first time they corrected me, I was like, and they were like, Sir Richard Branson. Sir Richard Branson in his book, Business Stripped Bare, said that small companies and startups should never actually be afraid of the giants in their industry because the giants are so consumed with momentum that they actually forget the opportunities that they still hold to actually capture way more in the target, in the market that they're in. Essentially, it's almost like when you're in the airport and there's people that walk on the travelators and there's people that don't. There's something about momentum that makes you naturally want to sit back and rest instead of enhancing it, harnessing it, and moving forward. And so the truth is that as we get bigger and as things are winning, many of you are the reason that we're winning because you've been winning.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Your life is better than it was, right? Like we're no longer having to pull Eva out of the club. Kidding. We never had to. You know what I mean? We're no longer... When Jack Thorne looks at his closet, he's not sitting there thinking, I'm going to go back and put that biker patch back on my jacket and go back to my life of crime. Like we're not struggling with that with Jack Thorne anymore. And it's just, Fallon's gone from like whatever she was into to being a doctor, clinical surgeon, head of all things in just therapy. Like we are experiencing our own wins, right? And so it's hard for us to sometimes get to a point where we start to consider that the momentum we've gained would be a momentum that we could lose. And the truth is, though, that every one of these specifically these two companies that we mentioned, they fell off. Like Nokia fell off. They were the phone company at a moment. Like Snake was everything. And they're gone. And Kodak, not what it was. And Blockbuster closed its doors in 2010. The last one is in Oregon and still exists, but there's no more. Like it finished. And I want to talk to us in our season of our greatest win. I want to put in us that we would not get so proud of our wins that we would eventually birth the beginning of our stumbling towards our losses. Yeah. And that while we are doing historical things and things are amazing, what would it look like to maybe avoid falling off? So I wanted to bring five things that I have experienced that would help us both from seeing the stories of these people to us in our greatest season. Because, you know, we've never seen in a Sunday morning as many people as we're seeing now. Like we used to have 3 services and get some good numbers between Jones and the 2 mornings, but like we've never been here. So I want you as a leader, I want you as the fact that you understand the first person you lead is you. And then the next things that you lead are obviously the concentric circles that go out from your life of influence. These 5 things to avoid us from going from, man, it was working, to what did we miss? Yeah. Because inevitably, it happens every time if you don't keep reinvesting into the growth. So number 1 is this, not looking at the support structures. But one of the things that people don't consider when growing is, am I actually at a place where I can support the growth that is coming? It's awesome to celebrate, 850 people in small groups, which is awesome. But my question is this, is 850 the max load of our support structures? Yeah. Or are we running at 40%, 50%, 120%? Because what will inevitably happen is if your support structures are not there, you will go back down to the very, like what they can handle. And that is for you also. Like, are you growing? Are you busier than you've ever been? Okay, well, what do your support structures look like? Like, do you have people asking you tougher questions? Do you have a more calculated and planned approach to rest, refueling, re-envisioning? Are you running on yesterday's inspiration? Like, how do you get new inspiration? Where do you go to God on that? Where do you go into your industry on that? Where do you go into the very niche that you lead on that? If you do not invest in more support, you will limit your growth. And so one of the first things that we have to do as we get bigger is understand, are we behind the scenes big enough for the growth that we want to see, are seeing, and how do you get about that? You got to start working some numbers back and speaking and asking yourself, what's healthy? How many grow group, practical example, how many grow group leaders do we have? How many people in their grow group? Is it sustainable for these grow groups to be running? If 80% of our groups are running at like 120% capacity, right. So instead of they've got 12, they've got 17, right. That's a problem. Yeah. And while Eva could sit there and like celebrate and bring all the, whoa, we're 850, the problem is that you typically end up not just staying, but losing. And with every loss, you don't just shrink back to the max of your support structure, you go beneath it. Right. So what are your support structures for you? If you're running hard, what's your support structure for your spiritual well-being? If you don't have it, you will crumble back to the lowest common denominator, if you will, your lowest common strongest foundation that you had. Number 2, I think most leaders do this and most companies do this, and that is riding the momentum instead of leveraging the momentum. Riding the momentum is when you allow the growth that you are experiencing to become something you enjoy, something you sit back and observe, something you sit back and celebrate. You essentially sit there and you ride the momentum and what it offers you. And it really starts to the clock starts ticking. There's a shelf life on every bit of and every season of momentum. So if we're going to go to the next sphere, I'd ask you right now, if we've got 4 worship leaders in the pipeline and worship's in its best season, okay, that's momentum. how are we leveraging that momentum to gain more momentum? If kids is now in a place where it's like writing programs on a Wednesday night, that's awesome. How are we leveraging that momentum? If we've got more people coming through the doors than ever before, how are we leveraging that momentum? If we are gaining momentum in all of our endeavors that we have at People Church and you have in your own life, are you leveraging it or are you riding it?
That's great.
If you don't use, even from a financial perspective, if you're a company and you don't take your earnings in the first 5 years and beyond, depending on the size and trajectory of the company, and reinvest it back into the company, aka leveraging your wins to create more wins, you will eventually ride those wins into the ground. Nokia never leveraged their wins as where they were. They should have had a stronghold on the handset industry. Yet they never invested into touchscreen and the technologies that were coming in. And because they never used their leverage, their momentum to leverage more momentum, they lost it. You know what? As a leader, this is not just something practical, it's conceptual. Yeah. If you're starting to see wins because Gio's preaching now and he's growing in his preaching, is he leveraging that? Because he could leverage that. He could leverage that to bring new leaders through. He could leverage that to build more excitement around what he does. There's wins, bring wins. If you know how to use them. Do you stop and celebrate? It could seem like a thing we just do, oh God, the celebrate portion. What's the point of it? Well, there's heaps. One, most people are so consumed with achieving that they rarely stop to feel like they've achieved. Yeah. The morale stops. People often don't stop to define that they've done well in a team. A lot of the people in your team, you can under-celebrate. You can under-celebrate the thing that you've been wanting to develop. Yeah. And when they finally get there, by not celebrating them, they don't know they've actually hit the marker. And one of the things that happens quite often is they lose hope. And because they lose hope, they lose, you see a downturn in effort, in enthusiasm, in reach. Are you leveraging momentum? Very good. And on the other side, are you possibly living a season? Are you in a downturn right now? If you're in a personal downturn or your team's in a downturn, maybe you could use today's Staffy as a retrospective look back and go, man, I actually didn't leverage momentum very well. Mm-hmm. There was a time where I made more money. There was a time where I had more leaders. There was a time where I had more time. There was a time where I had more energy. There was a time where I had all these things and I didn't leverage it. Leveraging is not just using it, but using it where it'll bring you a return. If you don't use the win to bring a bigger win, I think you'll often you fall off. Third one that I think is massive is not growing with the growth. Yeah. Personally, are you a better communicator today? Do you run a better team meeting than you did yesterday? Are you a better grow group leader? If you're a grow group leader, which is, I think, the nucleus of all leadership, because you've got to at least lead 12 well. And if you haven't led 12 yet, and I want to even say this to anyone in this room, even if you've got corporate aspirations, if you've got family aspirations, I challenge you, I stand on this 100%, as the saying goes, 10 toes in, I'm all in on this statement. If you cannot produce a grow group of 12 people that are leading 12 people, you might think too much of your leadership. Yeah. Yeah. I promise you. I'll tell you why. And I'll take you into a personal conversation that Ords and I have had over the years, over and over and over again, and what I am discovering is it's got nothing to do with ministry, is sometimes, and this is something that everyone in ministry talks about, and it's like, man, I wish I just had a company. If I had a company, I could just be a bit more cutthroat. I'll just run things a bit different because it's not the personal nature. When people choose a church, they also kind of choose a spiritual family. Mm-hmm. And so therefore it gets convoluted and complicated. You know what I mean? People don't just get upset with you, the leader. They get upset with you, their spiritual leader, who's supposed to be there for them in ways you know what I mean? And this is not a shot at therapy in any way, but as a therapist, as a check-in, check-out, no one's going to be upset with Fallon for not going to their birthday. You know what I mean? Where was my therapist on my birthday? That's not going to happen. But in ministry, it happens, right? And, the truth is that there can be this lie where it's like, man, I just wish I could do disconnected leadership that had less investment. And what I've found is that That's not necessarily true. Whilst maybe there are some companies that are big enough and have enough momentum, maybe Tesla, for example, so much momentum, that maybe they don't have to treat workers exceptional. I don't know if they do or they don't, because there's always going to be people that want to work for that brand and that vision. However, you can even bring something that big to a grinding halt. And we've seen that in the church world recently. Churches that we never thought would be going backwards because they were way too big, like, are going backwards. And I think what we don't realize is that the whole premise of my argument on you need to be able to lead 12 that can lead 12, to lead a company, to lead a family, is it's the basic skills of making people play for you when they don't have to. It's learning to be invested into someone wholeheartedly on a personal level, because that's the only way you can lead them to greatness. If you think about all the greatest soccer coaches, NBA coaches in this era, they're not teaching anybody how to kick a ball. They're not teaching anybody how to shoot. They're not teaching anybody. In fact, the most skilled people are on the court for a reason and they're paid for it. But the people that know how to lead that team and manage a collection of gifts at high levels and bring them all together and meld them into a team and bring synergy and help people come under a vision and sometimes sacrifice their skill set to come alongside someone else, that is leadership. And I promise you that all of that is proven if you can lead 12 to leading 12. And it's no different with children. There is an easy era of leading children, and that is the era where they know they have to do what you tell them. But at around 12 onwards, there is a shift happening where your children start to become adults, and adults with their own will, but they haven't left your house yet. And your leadership will not be marked by whether they are afraid of you, but whether they are inspired by you and whether you know how to inspire them into the thing that they're made for. Leadership is all about that. And so I do ask, like in this place, if you've got aspirations to lead a department in this place or lead a whole team or a whole even sphere in People Church, or you are on this screen and you want to be more than just, where you're at in your company, you have to learn how to lead 12 that can lead 12. Leading 12 is one thing. That's awesome. But can the 12 you lead actually lead 12 and do it well? If if not everybody under your leadership has a flourishing grow group, that's a thing. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So I want to encourage you, are you growing with the growth? Are you even growing in the knowledge that you need to grow in? Are you challenging yourself to be better at things that you probably don't even need to be? There is a real balance point between staffing your weakness and becoming better with your weakness. If you completely are at the mercy of staffing something that you fully do not understand, you can never fully staff it well. Because how do you even measure if someone's good at what they're doing? You've got to grow with your growth. And and some of us in this room, you might not be seeing growth in what you personally do, but then therefore but the things around you are growing. How are you going to grow with that? If the organization is growing, how are you growing with that? Invest into your growth. If you don't start growing with the growth, eventually you'll get outgrown, outpaced, and we know how that goes. Number 4. Development of the next season and sphere. I think this is where I think a lot of us get caught up in allowing ourselves to get caught up in the problems that growth brings without investing back into the top. The people that lead with you and the people that are responsible, how are you investing back into them and developing them for what's next? Every new sphere has new problems. You might say, well, I don't know what the next sphere is going to bring me, but there will be books on it. There's going to be books about people that have led and started, whether they've started companies or they've led churches from 2,000 to 3,000, from 3,000 to 10,000. There's going to be someone who has had to do your role before at a higher capacity. So the greatest thing you could do is leverage their journey and their experience to know what you need to develop in your people for what's to come. Because the growth you see today is because of the work you did yesterday. Like everything you're seeing today is because you learned a lesson a while ago. You supported, you invested, you poured into. And if you can get into the habit of understanding that the greatest thing that you bring to anything you lead is your ability to pour into the thing at its core, then it'll keep moving. Let me put in a practical example. I will sit and go through seasons of like pouring in at the top, right? So when we started the exec, it was a lot of like pouring into the exec, talking, training, teaching. Like it was a lot of man hours to the point where you start to ask yourself, should I just do the work myself? And I'm not trying to insult them. This is just a learning curve, or it's nothing to do with them. Someone's done that with me. It is really what companies talk about when it's like, man, it costs money to lose someone because you got to go all the way through and train them again. So there was this whole time, right, where you're pouring in, you're pouring in, and you're pouring in. I feel like now they're killing the game. They're doing so well in so many areas while we were gone, from their preaching, from the way they stepped up and led, through to the areas they lead. There's no mistake. Everything rises and falls on leadership. We didn't accidentally get 850 people in groups. Eva's leadership has just increased in leaps and bounds, and it's amazing. What I could do now is this. Ready? I could just do a bit of this. Just sit back, man. Eva's got it. Gio's got it. Now there's merit to space, because if I take it away from them, I also like stop their growth. But at the same time, I could sit there and go, we've got it. Or I can go back and go, how do I raise Eva for the problems that are coming at 2000? How do I like challenge Shannon for the things that are going to happen in our org when we've got more coming in? And Gio, if I can stay there instead of sitting here, or if I can stay there instead of thinking, well, they've learnt the lessons and they're going to keep going. If I can pour here instead of getting concerned with the front doors, and man, what's going on is that like now I've got to do some walkarounds and you got to stay in touch with what's happening at grassroots. But if I can invest here, the momentum will keep going. Yeah. So it's like developing for the next season and the next sphere. One key to that is you've got to name the next season and name the next sphere. Can you name the next season and can you name the next sphere that your thing that you're leading is heading into? And then the last one is this: accepting old problems as the norm instead of fixing them. Yeah. From a like software perspective, there's this thing called technical debt. And it's like, as you build, there's things you didn't build as well as you'd like to build that you then have to go back and fix, because if you don't fix them, eventually they're going to create more problems as you keep moving forward, or they're going to become expensive because they're not the most efficient ways to build things. And I think that is a truth in everything we build. And so what ends up happening is sometimes we've got problems that we just don't know how to fix. Sometimes we start to believe because we don't know how to fix them that, that's the way it'll be. Let me bring you a construct on that I'm currently working on, and a problem that we were working on that we fixed, I believe. Actually, factually, for now, because you're only as good as your last win. 2 stats that the church has long since accepted is that 20% of your church will go to small groups and 20% of your church will give. That is a standard amongst churches. Don't even get me started on cities. In cities, that drops again, and that is well being accepted by churches. So groups for a long time, I would say 6 years. For 6 years, I was starting to become convinced we can't fix that. You know what I mean? Like I would pull reports on a Monday. We'd do better marketing. We'd do everything we could. And I'd be like, okay, we're still got like 20. We get to 27% and then it just drops back down to 18 or 20. It was just like never moving. I was like, man, what the heck is it? At around year 6, we started to figure, I think we see heaps of points of improvement. Then it was like, can we actually fix those points? And then we went for ages. Like, how long did you have the sticker on your laptop?
When did I get my laptop? 2019. I removed it last year.
So 2019 to that's 4 years. So, okay, Eva had this problem sitting with her of trying to break 450 for 4 years. So 4 years, we found points of improvement. We strategized. Every exec meeting was painful. Renée meetings, like we're just going in. It's like, how do we fix this? Then all of a sudden, she busts through 450, then through 700, then through 850. That means that at the moment, not the sum of the people that call people church home, but the people that would sit in an auditorium, we are at about 80% of our people sitting in a group. So we went from the church saying 20% of the people in church will attend a group, and that is a long since accepted standard, to going to now 80% of our people sitting in a small group. So we achieved something that the industry said, that doesn't happen. It's like not something that happens. So it's funny how one thing that was impossible became a norm, and through accepting the norm, we stopped challenging ourselves to solve old problems in new ways, because that's just what it is. We said it's human nature. We said that's just the way it goes. And we never stopped to think that we might have the ability to, first of all, fix it, but also maybe it's arrogance. Maybe just because we can't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Right now, we're going after giving. 20% of the church gives just globally. Well, why can't that be 80? One of the people church values is we live by why not. And why not being, why not us? Why not this problem? Why not now? Why not this time? If all we do is accept what we do as, kids are never going to be passionate. We'll never have passionate kids. We'll never own a building because it's a city. No, like all that has to go out the window, and you have to anchor yourself by, I'm the person that will solve this problem, and I'll die trying if I have to. For me, accepting old problems will eventually amass a kind of sort of technical debt that will take down the very thing that you lead. And can I just speak to the health of all of you? What is your technical debt, if you will, in your personal life? What in your personality and character have you just ascribed to you will never change it? I'll always go back. I'll always revisit. I'll never. And in your marriage, what will you actually, for those that are married, for those of you that are trying to lead people or lead with people, like what have you decided that it's just going to always be there? And so you've accepted it as a norm. Even for some of you in this room, like maybe you're not the most skilled in an area that you need to be skilled for your job. Have you already started to look for another job instead of look to upskill? Why can't you? Why can't you be better? Why can't it be learned? I think you can out-hustle that. I think you can get better at strategy, and you can get better at planning, and you can get better at communication. You can. But it may take you more than it takes other people. Fine. But do you want to get there? If you accept it for what it is, I think you'll never change. Now, I don't think you can apply that to everything, because we are a collection of strengths and weaknesses. But if there is a weakness that is standing between you and what you need to achieve, you need to make a decision. And I think that makes you a way better leader. And when you do that, things move. I want to leave you with this phrase. This is what I felt from a Holy Spirit perspective for all of you that are considered staff or key volunteers. I felt this, and I felt like God just say, some people are becoming disconnected through a lack of hope. They've lost hope that they will work, that it will work, that they can change it. We were walking on the beach in Australia, and we were just debriefing different things and talking about some of our peers that we watched not quit ministry, but not be present. And Audrey just said this great statement. She's like, I definitely can, she goes, you know what it is, Chris? They haven't quit, but they have given up. Sometimes we might not hand in our proverbial resignation for the things and the positions in life that we're there for, because we're not quitters, but we've given up. We won't vacate the office. We won't vacate the place. We won't vacate the faith talk. Oh yeah, I know I'm going to be a preacher one day. Or, oh yeah, I'm going to get married one day. And oh yeah, I'm going to be whatever the thing that you're hoping for is. We might not stop saying it, because then people would know we've given up. But internally, we're not really pursuing it. My goal is that we would never fall in love with the numbers and the wins, but the pursuit of healthy things that build the kingdom. Love your job, love creating, love innovating, love showing up on a Sunday, love loving people, love leading, love that stuff, and get better. Make it a craft that you enjoy getting better at, not an outcome that you're trying to achieve. If we could do that, I believe that this will not be the first and only season that we saw wins. I believe that we can see as many wins and just leverage the momentum that's with us. I don't want to fall off. And I don't want somebody to one day be asking, where are they now? And put either People Church or your name alongside that question. Let's go into the 5 things that help us not lose momentum, but enhance it.